Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this Magic Squares bracelet featuring some embellished right angle weave. Thanks also to Sarah and our fulfillment team for picking out the fun colors for this video. If you want to see the exact colors that she picked out, go ahead and look below the video in the description to get a link back to our site to get the list. Gather up your materials and let's get started. So to begin this Magic Square bracelet, what we're going to be doing is making a series of squares or using right angle weave. We have 4mm pearls here along with 6mm bicones and 8 OC beads. The first thing we're going to do is add a stop bead or a bead that's going to come off the project eventually to the end of some size 8 dragon thread. I'm using a white color since I have this beautiful white opal crystal. The first thing we're going to do is pick up 4 of our pearls and make our first right angle unit. The 4 pearls, you're just going to pick up one right after the other, going in here, and letting them all drop down next to that stop bead. Once it's down next to that stop bead, we're going to create our first right angle unit. The right angle unit that we're going to create a little bit differently because we are going to embellish the right angle unit too. Go back through your first seed bead that you added, and then you're going to pick up one 8/0 seed bead. And the colors here picked out by Sarah in fulfillment go great together, adding a little bit of a darker 8/0 seed bead to this lighter purple pearl. After you exit through the next pearl, add one more of your 8/0 seed beads. Once again, an 8/0 goes in, and the 8/0s are going to go into each one of the corners here. The reason we did not start with the 8/0s between the 4mm pearls is because we want those pearls to sit really nice and close and the 8/0s to almost sit out to create that secondary square. We have the primary square, which is going to be the interior pearls, and then we have the secondary square, which includes those 8/0 seed beads. From here, we want to get to the end and start another right angle unit. So we're going to go through our 8/0 seed bead that we added first, and we are going to come out through our pearl right after. Give a nice tight pull, and again that finishes up that first magic square. From here we're going to go in and we're going to create another square, except this one is going to consist of one 6mm bicone, one pearl, another 6mm bicone, and the 4mm pearl that our thread is currently coming out of. Coming out of that pearl, you're going to add 3 more beads, 6, 4, 6, and sew into the opposite side of that 4mm pearl that the thread is coming out of and exiting. That creates our second little square. From here, go through the bottom 6mm bead and exit through the 4mm pearl. Even if you don't know right angle weave, you just created your second right angle weave unit. First one being our first pearl box, second one being the pearls on the right and the left, and the bicones on the top and the bottom. From here, we're on automatic repeat, going in and creating these magic squares. We've got 1, 2, and 3 pearls that we're adding. Coming out of that pearl there, we're going to go into the opposite side, sewing into the bottom since our thread is coming out the top. Going through that top pearl, and remember prior to doing that, grab your 8/0 seed bead, go through that top pearl, 8/0 seed bead, through the next pearl, 8/0 along all the corners, go up through that original 8/0 pearl, nice tight pull, and then once again we need to sew to get over to the right hand side. I like to flip the project as I'm working on it, so that way I am sewing up and usually going from the right to the left, going through the pearl and making sure that I'm exiting through the right hand side of the pearl on this last square that we made. Coming out the pearl again, We've got a new 6mm bicone that we're adding, a new pearl, a new 6mm bicone, and going into the opposite side of where the thread is coming out, that same pearl from the box previous. Once you're out from there again, we're on that repeat. Going in and bringing your thread over so that it's coming out the right-hand side of this next little square, going through the next bicone in line that you just added, and exiting through the pearl. As we exit through the pearl, 3 more pearls go on. We create our next little pearl box, add in our 8 seed beads, and then connect our bicone crystals to it. We're going to keep growing this and adding it the whole length of our wrist before we get ready to put on this beautiful clasp garden clasp. Once you're coming out of the final pearl, like you're getting ready to add your next unit, but lengthwise you are finished and done, and you need to add your clasp to it. You are going to come out of that last pearl, add on 1 and 2 of your 8 seed beads, pick up your clasp sewing through one of the loops of it, sew back down through that second 8, add another 8 seed bead, and then sew back through the pearl that your thread is currently coming out of. You want to give a nice tight pull to eliminate any extra thread that's showing, and sew up through that triangle one more time. Sewing up through, reinforcing the loop, and for a total of 3 times going in and making sure that you have 3 strands going around your clasp. Going back down through that pearl, and then up again through the clasp. If you have some 11 seed beads, you can actually add an 11 before the 8s and after the 8s as well, just to hide a little bit of that thread. And once you've got 3 passes in here, going through your beads and your clasp, that way it's nice and attached, what you're going to do is sew down in the project to get rid of your thread, and then we'll put the clasp on the opposite side. Sewing down through the project, you want to bring your thread somewhere that's inconspicuous for you to tie the knot. So the best place for us to be able to tie and hide the knot with the white thread is going to be next to a white pearl or in between the pearls themselves. I'm going to sew down through that last magic square here with that 2 exterior right angle weaves, or the embellished right angle weave. Having a discussion on that on Twitch if you've never joined us there. It's a great place to hang out with other Potomac beaders. And you're going back through the pearls before you get to your crystals. Once you're exiting through that pearl right before the crystal, sew underneath the thread, connecting the crystal to the pearl. Take your needle and thread and create that little loop there. Sew through the loop once, sew through the loop twice, give a nice tight pull, and that knot is going to disappear right next to one of the crystals. Sew through a crystal to bring the knot in a little bit more. Sew down through the next pearl. And then prior to that 6mm crystal, we're going to burn down our thread end. You can sew through the crystal if you want to. Actually, we'll go through that. We'll sew through the crystal. And then as we bring it out through the crystal, that's when we're going to go ahead and burn down that thread end close to the crystal so you can barely even see it. Go ahead and take your stop bead off the other end and attach to the other side of your clasp guard and push clasp. Once you go in and attach your other side of your clasp to your bracelet, your Magic Squares bracelet is completed with that embellished right angle weave, double-sided here, and you have the beautiful X's and your 6mm bicones that fit perfectly right next to it. I love seeing the color difference and how much different it looks going with a lighter crystal versus a darker crystal, and I'm looking really forward to seeing everybody's examples that they post of their Magic Square bracelet in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this beautiful Magic Square bracelet. I can't wait to see everybody's additions, like I said, in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There's so many options for this bracelet and simple changes that can be made, like changing down from a 4mm to an 8 seed bead to a 4 and 11, and really having fun changing up crystal sizes as well. If you do need to see all those materials again, go ahead and look below the video in the description, which will give you a link to get back to our site. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, Potomac Beaders, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.